This level is enormous, with only a few game objects alive. So that means my world can be enormous, without slowing the game down. Yes, your levels can be huge and enormous and the performance is great. But that still doesn't explain why you decided to make a custom level editor. Because there are a lot of other editors. So basically you are reinventing the wheel, right? So now I can actually give you a few examples why I decided to make my own. Because I know there are existing level editors that can also be used for custom level editors, custom game engines like Telt. And I know there are a few more, but I'm just giving as example Telt. If you are not using your custom game engine, then of course you have the engines like Godot, Unity and Unreal that ships with a proper scene editor. I know, but let me go to a few of them why I think it's still better to have your custom level editor, even if you are using one with a proper scene editor. So, for example, this is especially for external editors. You don't have direct access to your object. So if you wrote a nice system that you that you know which objects needs to spawn and the sprites are currently mapped in a specific way, then basically in Telt you need to do all those things again. Which leads to my second point, is basically double work. So that means that you need to, Telt will export it to his format, and then you need to somehow map it to your logic. And you can say, yes, you can spend some effort to make that mapping work, but still you are doing double work. Because if you have your own custom level editor and you are designing everything in a central way, then you can iterate way faster. And another thing is that for in proper game engines like Godot, Unreal and Unity, those are made for they are made for that you can make all kinds of games on it. So it's not really a level editor, it's a scene editor, so it's really generic. And that leads to so that means in my level editor, for example, if you're making a custom level editor, then it's designed specifically for your game. And that makes it also faster and, in my opinion, also way nicer and more enjoyable to make your levels, because they are specific. This game level editor is then specifically designed for your game and nothing else. Yes, it will have less features, but you only have the features that you really need, which is, in my opinion, only better. Less is more, they always say, right? And of course, the biggest and the best point of all, which will be when you finally ship your game and you have your level inside your in-game level editor, which is, by the way, what I'm talking about, then people can actually make custom levels because you already have it inside your game engine. So why not expose it for the public? Then the only thing that you need to do is make sure that the user experience is usable, and not only for you that you need to know which specific buttons you need to press and then it's going to crash. That will be important, but then at least that makes the replayability of the games, and because hopefully people will then share the levels and they can try to challenge others, and you can see and it's also, I think, in my opinion, fun to see that what other people are coming up with specific levels, right? So I think I give you enough reasons why I decided to go for my custom level editor. So maybe you are now curious how my game level editor looks. Well, just a small heads up, it looks shit. But doesn't care, because this is an early prototype and I'm going to iterate to it, but the design behind it, in my opinion, is great. Alright, I promise you to show the level editor, and indeed it's inside my game engine, and I only have to switch the scene to load my level editor. So in here we have the level editor. Like I already mentioned, it really looks like shit. And yes, I have two mouse cursors at the moment, but because I am using my CRT shader and the actual mouse position is not the correct position. But all right, I'm rambling too much. All right, so how does this work? So basically, you have here you can see your mini map, and if I am, for example, loading this level, then you can see which objects are actually spawned. So red will be the enemies and green will be coins. And if I'm now going to draw an actual object in the screen, then you can see that I am now adding right objects to the scene. And actually, I was thinking about it because the thing that I really wanted to build is first something that is just workable. So that's also the reason why my designs and maybe the usability as such is not the primary focus of this level editor. Basically, it just needs to work. But one of the few most important parts is that you have an easy overview of what you actually have, and then that you can easily navigate to the level. And I think this minimap solved that perfectly. So you can easily drag around it, and also you see here the gray border. That basically means where the actual level ends. And then here you can specify which item you want to have, and here you can specify your tool. And then here you have the name, and then you can just set it to a specific name, and then you can load it or save it. Yes, maybe in the future, in the future I will just make a proper drop down of those things, and maybe changing the UI a little bit nicer. But you know what is actually funny is that my game is actually running on 360 by 640 by 360, and including the CT shader and such. You have seen the level editor, but now comes the question: how does it work in the guts? I will keep it lightly. Don't worry. I'm not going to talk too much in code form. But basically, the level editor is just an object, and then you have a layer. And then you have a spatial index. And what is, for people that doesn't know what a spatial index is, by the way, this is things that are already included in my game engine. Basically, a spatial index is that you can place objects in a world, and then you can query them on their specific location in a very fast way, which is actually perfect for this situation. This is also the same reason why one of the big benefits is that my objects doesn't have to be all in the same fixed size. No, they can be any size. Doesn't matter. There's another big benefit from this. Then in the same layer, I'm also saving all the objects that is actually placed in the object. That makes it easier, because my spatial index is great for querying specific locations, but it's not that great to get all the objects. So I have a separate list of those objects, which is, by the way, also used for actually saving and loading the level data. But now comes another question. Yes, you can place objects, but where are those objects coming from? Well, I have a separate list, which I'm calling the toolbox, where you have the enemy or specific tiles, or even in the future maybe smart tiles, and and such. But I'm going to explain this part a little bit later. Then also in the level, of course, you need to know how big the level is. Because in my game, I'm writing a shoot 'em up, which is always scrolling up. And it needs to know when the level ends, because that means if you are at the end of the level, then the level is done. And of course, the system needs to know where to actually load and save those data. So I thought, let's make a name and a group in a very structured way. So you have no freedom to where you actually place it. No, but it will automatically place it in the assets group name, and then with the extension .lvl. So, but yeah, of course, you have the toolbox, but how are those objects placed in the level, and also how do they differentiate between the toolbox and the layer? Well, there are two separate objects. Basically, you have the main object, which is called the level object, which holds information like which sprite need to be rendered for also in a level editor, but also maybe in a game. By the way, is completely optional, but I'm going to explain this later. We also have something that is called logic. That is just an interface, and you can just implement how the actual object needs to behave, which gives you a lot of freedom, but let me talk about the specific part later. And then you have also the ID, and you have some other parts, but to make this video not too long, I'm not going to go too much in detail about those. You have, of course, the ID, and the ID is necessary because when you are serializing the data, this level object, all the information inside this level object, won't be saved in the actual level data object. And there are a few benefits by doing that. Is that if you made a level, when you are iterating and you're developing, then you have still complete freedom how you can extend and you can add stuff to the level object without destroying the actual game object. I mean the level itself, so it won't load anymore. So because now comes to the other part, the actual data that's going to be saved or in the level, because then if it's loading and saving, then it needs to know what it actually is, and then it needs to return back to the original state where what it originally was. So then you have something called the placed object, and of course this is specifically for each item in the level. And then you have things like position, rotation, if it needs to be flipped, and more. So that way, with this basic foundation, you can basically almost do anything if you are keeping it, of course, in my for my part the 2D, of course. 3D will be a different whole bag of a challenge, of course. But you have also I was talking about something like logic. And what do I actually mean with logic? Well, remember that I showed you that I was able, you can also see it here, objects 2005 from the 20,000. Well, because I am using this spatial index, I am only queuing, querying the actual viewport. And then what will happen is that it will request, those objects are in. And then it's going to, if you have, for example, a logic that is simply just going to render the tile, which is specified in the level object, then it's just going to render. But you also have another logic which will actually spawn an actual game object with a lot more logic inside it. And then, of course, the place object itself won't be rendered, But the big benefit from this is that I'm only spawning objects that are currently visible on the screen. Because in my shoot 'em up, everything that is getting out of the screen also get automatically destroyed. So, and actually, funny enough, I was not even thinking about this, but I actually made a streaming level system. Because, and that is also the same thing that, maybe you guys can remember it, but you have that game from Morrowind, and then at a certain time they all have of course the Fallout games and such. And I know that this is 3D, but the main reason why those games can so enormous is because they are not loading everything in once. No, they only streaming what is really needed. And that makes the level so enormous. And that's exactly the same thing, but for me in 2D, what's happening here. So, but keep in mind, it was just a lucky coincidence. But at least I have then more than enough room to make a real nice bullet hell, because the performance is still great. For example, here on my MacBook M4, I'm currently running the level with almost 20,000 game objects inside it. But only currently active are the are 210. And you can see that my game loop is currently running around, let me just say, 5,000 frames per second. Yes, it's that fast. So performance won't be an issue in that regard. So that's basically how this the game engine works. Maybe to light everything up a bit, maybe you will see a level. All right, I promise you a proper level. Well, proper level is kind of a big word, because yes, my game still looks like shit, but at least you have something to shoot at, and you can play around with it, and you can get the objects. You see, you can shoot the objects, you can destroy enemies. Ooh. And also you can see here that it's collecting points, and there you go. And now you can see the level is done. You can see that it's really tracking everything. How many enemies you got, how many collectibles you collected, and based on on those calculations, it knows how much that you finished the actual level, and it's currently at 84. By the way, this is also a reference to Tyrant, because Tyrant does the game Tyrant from 1999 is doing kind of the same thing, which is my game largely based on. But you can also see that you have cargo items. And yes, my current cargo weight is 0.100, because every item that is get inserted as 0 cargo weight. I did it because I want to do some testing, and I didn't turn it back, so that's the reason. And then you have the cargo value, and basically allow me to explain what the actual game loop is. And I did already mention it in my previous video. So if you want to know more about it, then it is fully explained in the previous video. But the current goal is that you have the mission, and then you are basically getting to the ship upgrade system, and then you have specific money that you need to upgrade your ship. And then you can return back to a mission, and you can choose which mission you want to do. And that's the current goal. And that is also something that I want to show maybe in the upcoming video, that I have a basic upgrade system that you can actually spend your money. There are basically for this specific game, you have that you need to do the missions and such. But you're also ending up at a space station. But I can use the same level editor for also to draw out that specific level will completely be different, of course, because you are not scrolling always up and such, and you are basically walking around, not really like a full platformer, but you need to go to specific points and places that you actually can engage with. So, but it will actually be better if you have something visual that you actually can draw out your own game objects. And maybe also use some specific tiles and such, right? So yeah, this is what I really want to show, to see. I hope that you enjoyed this video. And I just want to say, if you really want to help me out, please like and subscribe. And if you find it interesting, you want to follow along with this with my game, then just subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you the next time. Bye.